Well, thank you all so much for joining us for the history of Walt Disney World's Hollywood Studios. Hollywood Studios is the Florida park that has undergone the most changes since it opened in 1989. Some have been positive and some not so much. Examine the original vision for this park and how it has evolved over the years. Then explore the significant additions to the park, including Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge, and the park as it is today. And this presentation is led by Valerie Gugala, who's I'll get that right one of these days, Valerie.
That's okay.
She's a historical presenter and lecturer who specializes in Abraham and Mary Lincoln, presidential history, the Victorian era, and of course, all things Disney. She's an avid Disney fan. She's taken more than 25 trips to Disney in the past 15 years, and she's an official Disney Vacation Club member and a D23 club member. You can see how out of touch I am when it comes to Disney. So all 70 of us or so, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Valerie for joining us here this afternoon. And Valerie, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be back here again with you. Welcome to everybody who has been with me before, and to those of you who are joining for the first time. I'm so excited to see you all from all across the country. And let's get started. Let's talk about Disney's Hollywood Studios. The third park that I'm going to be talking about at Disney, the third park that was built. So as Robert said, I'm a historian and public speaker, love Disney. These are a few pictures of me at Disney. Actually, the top one of me and Walt was taken at Hollywood Studios. That's my contact information, which I can give you again later. I put together some suggested reading lists. I felt like whenever I do presentations at libraries in person, I'm able to hand out a handout with some suggested reading. And I didn't think it was fair that all of you that are joining us virtually didn't get to have that. So if you go to my website after the presentation, and that's my website right there, you can look, and there's a few different suggested readings about Disney World that you can take a look at and maybe do some more reading on your own if you're interested. But enough about me. Let's talk about Hollywood Studios. So of all the parks that Disney World has, Disney's Hollywood Studios, or as it was known, Disney's MGM Studios, has gone through the most transformation over the years. They've added new rides, they've taken things away, they've even changed the name. That was the most drastic change, was actually changing the name. Now, instead of being really a working movie studio like it was intended to be, it has immersive themed areas like Galaxy's Edge, Toy Story Land, but it was very different when it opened on May 1st, 1989. The idea for MGM Studios started not long after Michael Eisner became the CEO of the Disney Company in 1984. Eisner had previously worked as the CEO for Paramount, and he used his movie background to start thinking about future attractions for Disney. MGM, the theme park, was originally meant to be an entertainment-centered pavilion at Epcot. And this is, you see on your screen, some concept art for what the entrance to that pavilion could have looked like. It would have been placed in between the Imagination Pavilion and the Land Pavilion at Epcot, if you're at all aware of the layout of Epcot. And actually in this concept art on the left-hand side, you can kind of see the side of the Imagination Pavilion, if you recognize that. It would have contained a ride known as Great Moments in the Movies, or as actually the ride when it was developed came to be known, the Great Movie Ride. The facade would have been designed to look like a movie set backdrop with a soundstage and a small ticket booth as the entrance. And it was specifically designed to look fake because it was a commentary on Hollywood and how movies were made. As the plans developed, Eisner decided that really they could take this concept for a pavilion and turn it into an entire separate theme park. Now, there's two stories of how this came to be. The first is that Michael Eisner knew about Universal's intentions to build the movie studio theme park in Orlando, Universal's park that's there now. And he saw the great movie ride and the pavilion, turning that into a whole park as an opportunity to beat Universal at their own game. The other story about how it came to be is that he loved the idea of this pavilion so much that he told the Imagineers, go ahead and create a whole park around the great movie ride. So you can kind of decide which one you think is actually true. And that is Michael Eisner on the left there with Mickey, and Frank Wells is on the right. They were the Disney heads at the time that the park was developed. Go forward. This is just some early concept art for the MGM studios, the Imagineers starting to think about what the park would be like. And you can see right here, we already have the setup for what became the park entrance. The park would function as a working studio with sound stages and production facilities for film and television, and a new Florida unit for Walt Disney Animation Studios, which would be working on projects supervised by the main studio in Burbank. They actually produced 3 films at MGM Studios. You would have various tours through the park, and that would allow guests to have a close-up look at how film production worked. And these pictures are of 2 of the stages that were on the backlot tour that you would go through and see when you went on the tour. When Disney MGM Studios opened, it consisted of 2 parts. There was the backstage tour, which was a 2-hour guided tour. There was a tram portion and an hour-long walking portion that included a chance to observe actual sound stages like we saw in the previous slide. And those sound stages would have television and motion picture production. And then the other part of the park was a theme park. It was guest areas that were modest in scope. There were several shops, there were a few restaurants, there was a show, and there was 1 ride when the park opened besides the tram tour, and that was the Great Movie Ride. Now, if you look on this map here, on the right here, everything that's in purple was considered backstage or part of the backstage tram tour. Everything else was actually part of the park. You can see it's not really a very big area at all. And this is why for a long time, many people considered the studios to be a half-day park. This is just one of the early advertisements for the Disney MGM Studios theme park. So let's talk about how the park changed over the years. And the one thing we will see with this park is change. That's the constant in this park, is change. Okay, moving forward. From the opening day on May 1st, 1989 until January 7th, 2008, the park had this logo and it was called Disney's MGM Studios. Now in 1985, Disney had entered into a licensing agreement with MGM to increase the variety of film representation in the new park. MGM felt the deal would generate publicity for the classic film, so they thought it was a good deal for them as well. But this relationship was rocky from the start. The same year that the park opened, MGM filed a $100 million fraud suit against Disney, claiming that by operating a working studio at the theme park, Disney was violating the agreement. MGM thought when they made the contract to use the name that they were just giving Disney license to use their films for attractions, not to allow Disney to put their creations at a working studio, which would be in direct competition to them. Disney countersued MGM, claiming that a project that MGM was working on at that time, which was a hotel and theme park in Vegas, was in violation of that same agreement. So it wasn't until 1992 that a judge said that Walt Disney could use the MGM name and the lion logo at MGM theme park. And the judge also ruled that the MGM Grand Hotel and theme park that was still under construction in Vegas could also use the MGM name and the logo as long as the theme park was not based on the movies like Disney's was. This is the studio gate after the name was changed in 2008. In 2008, because of all the problems with MGM and the contract had run out and MGM decided not to renew the agreement with Disney, Disney had to change the name of the park. So it was changed to Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now in 2019, Disney decided that really the focus of this park had moved away from studios, from being an actual working studio that was making movies, and more just about movies in general. And so on May 1st, 2019, Disney revealed this, which is the proposed new logo for the park. And you'll see that the emphasis has shifted from the previous logo, which was Studios was bigger, if you look here, than Hollywood, to the new proposed logo where the word Hollywood is bigger. And that is more their emphasis now is Hollywood. Let's talk about some of the icons for the park. Now, every Disney park has an icon, or in Disney speak, it's called a weenie. At the Magic Kingdom, the weenie is Cinderella Castle. At Epcot, the weenie is Spaceship Earth. So let's talk about what the weenie has been at this park, and it's changed over the years, which is a little bit unusual because usually the weenie is the same. It's never been anything but Cinderella Castle at the Magic Kingdom. But again, this park, the only constant is change. So at the beginning of this park's history, the Eiffel, or I shouldn't say Eiffel, it's the Eiffel Tower was an opening day feature. It was a water tower made into the icon for the park. There was a real water tower that we see on the right, the black one with ears on it. And then there was also a topiary version that we see on the left there with ears on it. It was the real water tower was a nod to one of the first structures at Walt's Hyperion Boulevard studio in California. There was a water tower there that was 135 feet tall and was completed in 1939. And so this tower was built as a nod to that studio. In 1986, they changed what this tower said on it. It just said Walt Disney Productions on it instead of Disney MGM Studios. And when they built Galaxy's Edge, unfortunately, it came down. Here's a couple other pictures of it. This is with the new logos on it for Hollywood Studios. On Friday, April 29th, 2016, the Orlando Sentinel reported the Eiffel Tower, one of the original and iconic structures of Disney's Hollywood Studios, has been removed. They had to get rid of it to get, like I said, to get ready for Galaxy's Edge. And actually both of them went, not just the actual water tower, but also the topiary water tower was removed as well. So the park still has a landmark on the entrance area. This is the Chinese Theater. It's where the Great Movie Ride was housed, and it's behind the facade of Grauman's Chinese Theater. It was a secondary symbol of the park when the water tower still existed, and it appeared on the front of guidebooks and in advertising, and now it's home to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which we'll talk about. This theater is pretty much an almost exact replica of the original Chinese theater in Los Angeles, California. Now, these two pictures, there's one on the right and one on the left. When you look at them, you probably can tell which is the Disney version and which is the original version, but I'll give you a minute to look at them. And I will tell you that the one on the left is the Disney version. The one on the right is the original Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. The one in Hollywood is a real movie theater. It opened May 18th, 1927, with the premiere of The King of Kings, directed by Cecil B. DeMille. This theater in California has been home to many premieres, including the premiere of Star Wars in 1977. The original theater was built by Charles Grauman and was first known as Grauman's Chinese Theater. It was declared a historic and cultural landmark in 1968 and has undergone many restoration projects over the years. At the time the original theater was built, most people in the United States really didn't know a lot about China, and the theater was designed with the intention of giving Americans a bit of a feel of what China was like. In the courtyard of the original Grauman's Theater, there's close to 200 signatures, handprints, and footprints of well-known actors and actresses. Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford were the first to be honored, and Groucho Marx added his cigar, and Whoopi Goldberg added dreadlocks to hers. When Disney's MGM Studios was being constructed, it was decided that the Chinese theater would be one of the weenies for the park. Because Disney World is about authenticity, the Imagineers who created the building used the actual blueprints that were used to build the original theater in 1927. They don't call the Disney version the Grauman's Chinese Theater, it's simply the Chinese Theater. And this is it being built at the studios. What would the Chinese theater be without footprints, handprints, and signatures? Well, nothing. So from 1989 to 1995, many stars added themselves to the concrete in the forecourt. On the park's opening day, Mickey, Donald, Minnie, Goofy, Roger Rabbit, and other Disney characters were immortalized in the pavement. And we can see here we have Jim Henson, Robin Williams, many others. If you walk around outside the Chinese theater, there's lots of them there in the pavement. In late 2001, Disney constructed this 122-foot tall Saucerer Mickey hat directly in front of the Chinese theater. And it pretty much completely hid the facade. Now, there were people that were very large fans of the Saucerer hat, and there were people who didn't like it. Originally, Disney said it would just be there for the year 2001, but it went on and on and on. Now, some people say that it really didn't look like a wizard's cap. It looks like a blue traffic cone tipping over. But, you know, I got to say, I agree with them. I was never a fan of the Saucerer's hat. I liked the view of the Chinese theater. The hat sat on a foundation made from concrete, enough to cover a football field. It was painted with chameleon paint that shifted color as you walked around it. I think I said it stood 122 feet tall and had an inner space of 60,000 cubic feet. Now, originally, the plan was to put this Saucerer's hat just outside the entrance to the park, and it would have been on a space that had been cleared for a restaurant that was never built. And originally, it was going to be twice the height that it ended up being, so almost 500 feet tall it would have been. And the two swirls that you can see in the pictures where Mickey's hand is on one of them, those would have been two Ferris wheels if it had been built the full size that they originally intended. And they intended to put, when it was going to be that big, they were going to put an attraction called One Man's Dream underneath, which is a recap of Walt Disney's life, which is actually in the park today that I'll show you. The plans were changed when the retail side of the park decided to fund the project and put it at the center of the park. And it was actually what was inside, or under, not really inside, but underneath the hat was a pin trading station. After 13 years of blocking the Chinese theater, on January 7th, 2015, removal of the Saucerer's hat began, and it was completely removed by February 25th, 2015. And I was one that was very happy to see it go. And I apologize to those of you if there's anyone who liked it. I suppose I wouldn't have disliked it as much if it had only been there for a year or two, but 13 years was quite a long time. So opening day for Disney's MGM Studios was May 1st, 1989. Now, this was part of Michael Eisner's speech that day. He said, "The world you've entered was created by the Walt Disney Company and is dedicated to Hollywood. not a place on a map, but a state of mind that exists wherever people dream and wonder and imagine, a place where illusion and reality are fused by technological magic. We welcome you to a Hollywood that never was and always will be. And that's Michael Eisner and Mickey and Bette Midler at the dedication. And here we have a picture of Michael Eisner in the center next to Bob Hope, leading in the first family, the first patrons to Disney's MGM Studios on May 1st, 1989. So what rides and attractions are at the studios? On opening day, there were only 2 attractions, really, the Great Movie Ride and the Tram Tour. But there was this, Hollywood Boulevard. It was inspired by a real street of the same name, and it serves as the park's main entrance. And you can look right down Hollywood Boulevard. You could on opening day, and you can again now. Look right down Hollywood Boulevard to the Chinese Theater. It serves the same purpose as Main Street USA at the Magic Kingdom. It's lined with themed facades and venues, mostly shops selling Disney merchandise, and also some of the park services. There is a Starbucks on Hollywood Boulevard as well. But let's go back a little bit and talk about the entrance and the ticket booths at Hollywood Studios. And all of the buildings on Hollywood Boulevard, they're all modeled on actual Hollywood buildings that are from mostly the 1920s and the 1930s. And this is true of the entrance. The row of ticket booths was inspired by the Pan Pacific Auditorium, which is a 1935 landmark in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles. The Pan Pacific Auditorium was the top indoor venue in LA, hosted lots of different exhibitions and meetings and concerts. It was abandoned in 1972, but then in 1978, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. This black and white picture is a photograph of the actual auditorium. And if any of you are thinking that it maybe looks familiar to you, it might. It did appear in several movies, including the movie Xanadu. It was the site of the nightclub at the end of the movie. This is the entrance plaza of Hollywood Studios under construction. This would be standing kind of off to the side, probably on top of one of the ticket booths. And this is Hollywood Boulevard right here, this line of palm trees going down towards the Chinese Theater. And we have the Crossroad of the Worlds right here that we're going to talk about in a minute with the globe and Mickey on the top. Here they are putting the Mickey on top of the globe. This Mickey is actually a lightning rod. So the real Crossroads of the World was built in 1936. The real version is on the left and the Disney version is on the right. You can see that they are very similar. The Disney version is a tower with a pin shop at the base. And the real version is an open air mall, sometimes credited as LA's first modern shopping mall. Also in the entrance plaza of the studios is Oscar's Super Service, and it was inspired by service stations of the 30s, like the one on the left. The one on the right is the Disney version. Now, service stations varied from different styles, but this is kind of a combination of what was a popular style in the 30s. Along Hollywood Studios is on the right, the dark room. And we see on the left the building that it was modeled after, also called the Dark Room. So back in 1989, when the studios opened, cameras still needed film. Remember that? And so this was the park's main film store. It got a prime location on Hollywood Boulevard. It's still there today, although the merchandise has changed. But the most distinctive thing about this store is the camera that's facing out onto Hollywood Boulevard. And you can see that is the same on the original there. The original had opened in 1938. The camera was 9 feet tall and made of black glass with clear glass as window displays. So, Pluto's Toy Palace, which we see here on the right, is a replica of this building on the left that also had a dog on top of it. It was originally a veterinarian practice in Hollywood. The building was completed in 1930 and it later became an animal hospital. And now it's an office building. And the Imagineers used it for the inspiration to put Pluto on top. This is another one of the buildings. You can see how closely the Imagineers copied these buildings at the studios. It's just amazing. Tailored to the Stars on the right is a large space with Art Deco style, and it sells t-shirts and fancier Disney fashions. And they used as the inspiration for it the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And you can see the differences there. Forward. There we go. Okay, the Carthay Circle Theater. In this example, the black and white picture on the right is the original theater, and the Disney version is on the left. Now, the Carthay Circle Theater was a very historic movie theater. Sadly, it was demolished in 1969 to make way for an office complex. It was a Mission Revival style theater that opened in 1926. It had a 1,500 seat auditorium and was one of the top theaters in LA for exclusive engagements of major movies. The Carthay Circle Theater hosted numerous premieres, including Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. So you can see why it would be so important to the Disney company. Dinosaur Gertie's Ice Cream of Extinction, which we see here in color, and that is a little stand along Echo Lake in the Hollywood Boulevard area. It gets an inspiration from two sources. One is California Crazy roadside eateries, which were roadside eateries that were shaped like something else, maybe shaped like an ice cream cone or a hot dog or a dinosaur. It also gets its inspiration from a cartoon by Winsor McCay from 1914 called Gertie the Dinosaur. And this is a still from Gertie the Dinosaur. Winsor McCay didn't invent cartoons, but he's recognized for creating the first cartoon character with personality. And so that's one of the reasons that Disney chose to honor with Gertie the Dinosaur here. The Hollywood Brown Derby restaurant is one of the few Walt Disney World signature restaurants, or you might say expensive restaurants or more upscale restaurants, that is inside a theme park. It's not identical to the Brown Derby that was in Hollywood, but they tried to keep with the same feel of it. They needed to make the restaurant a lot bigger at the studios than it was in real life in Hollywood. But as you can see from the pictures, they still are very, very similar. Let's talk about the backlot tour and what that entailed, because that was one of the two opening attractions. So on this map here, everything in red is where you would go on the backstage tour. It was a two-part adventure. You would go behind the scenes of an actual motion picture studio. And I think I said it was a 2-hour guided tour. These are the trams that you would ride on for part of the adventure or part of the attraction. So the first part of the attraction was the backstage shuttle station, where your adventure began. You'd be introduced to the business of show business, and then you'd get on the shuttle and travel into the heart of the production center. You would go past costuming, which is the picture kind of on the top here, and you would see the designers making the clothes worn by your favorite stars. Usually they were actually probably working on character costumes, clothes for Mickey, Minnie, characters like that. And then on the bottom here is the scenic shop, where they would make different things for any of the productions that were going on. They would repair things. Kind of a woodworking shop or metalworking shop, anything that needed to be made, they would make it here. Then you would go by Residential Street. The homes on Residential Street appeared in films like Splash 2 and Ernest Saves Christmas. But their most recognizable houses on Residential Street belonged to the family from the TV show Empty Nest, and also from the Golden Girls, if you remember either of those. After Residential Street, you would go through Catastrophe Canyon. It was a journey through a unique outdoor set where you'd experience artificial disasters that seem real in movies, but even more impressive up close. So there would be this tanker truck that would start on fire and seem to come towards you and crash, and then there would be water cascading down towards you. It was quite impressive. After Catastrophe Canyon, you would drive past New York Street, which was just a backlot set that they could use to film street scenes. There were forced perspective buildings at the end of the street that made what was only 2 blocks look like an entire city. After that, you would go to the water effects tank, and you might be picked out of the audience to do some audience participation and be part of an ocean storm scene. And you can see in one of these pictures, they actually had one of the old subs from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in this water tank as an example of movie magic. So that's kind of cool. Then after the water tank, you would go to the special effects workshop, and you would explore the fascinating science of optical illusion. Then you would drive past the Boneyard, which is where they kept large props and cars from many different Disney productions. You can see some very famous items here. We've got Herbie the Love Bug, 2 items from different Star Wars movies, and these wooden things, these are from, I believe, the 2nd Pirates of the Caribbean movie. The tour guides always enjoyed calling them the pirate balls. And then these are the sound stages you would go by. They were specifically designated stages that we saw earlier that would let you look on movies and television shows in production. And then you would go to the post-production editing and audio editing, and they would show you how movies are edited together. And then the final stop on the tour would be the Walt Disney Theater, where you would see some sneak previews of upcoming movies. And all of that would take you 2 hours. When you were done with that, then you could go to the other attraction that was in the park on opening day, the Great Movie Ride, which is a very much beloved attraction by many, many Disney fans. It employed the use of audio animatronic figures and sets, and also some live actors to recreate classic scenes from 12 different films throughout motion picture history. And this attraction was 22 minutes long. This is some early concept art for the Great Movie Ride, concept art of the gangster scene, concept art of the Wizard of Oz scene, and some concept art of the Western scene. Here we have an Imagineer working on a scale model of the load area for the Great Movie Ride. It's really interesting to see how they did these things. And here are some Imagineers working on what was the first scene in the ride, which was called Footlight Parade. It was a 5-tiered cake of bathing beauties that represented a 1933 movie called Footlight Parade. Here are some other Imagineers working on some of the different figures from the movie, some for the Wizard of Oz scene and some for the Aliens scene. And we have Imagineers setting up the Indiana Jones scenes here, working on different things. More work on the Indiana Jones scenes. And more work on, well, this is right after the Indiana Jones scenes. This is the scene with all the skeletons. Now, I just thought this picture was really interesting. There was a scene in the ride that was Tarzan, and it was in a jungle, and this is the animatronic of Jane. And I thought it was really interesting to see her not in her place, just being tested at the Disney Imagineering Studios. Eventually, she would actually sit on top of this elephant, basically right where this Imagineer in the orange shirt is sitting is where she would sit. And I have a picture of her there later, but this is what she looked like before they put her up on the elephant. Just very interesting. Here's some Imagineers also working on the Wicked Witch animatronic. She was one of the most sophisticated animatronics at Disney World when she was first put into the attraction. And she was a very fluid moving animatronic. And then this is an Imagineer working on the Western scene. This is the finished load area for the Great Movie Ride. So this is the first scene that's based on the movie Footlight Parade, and was finished when the ride first opened. Originally, this would rotate, each tier rotated separately, and there were fountains that sprayed water behind it and around it, not on the guests. And then there were diving beauties on a diving board next to it, ready to dive into the water. There really was no water. So the problem is when they turned this on and they turned on the rotating and they turned on the water, it really didn't work well. The ride track flooded and the turntables didn't turn well. And so they had to turn it all off. This is a scene from the original movie. You can see the water spouting in the original movie. So why the problems happen depend on who you talk to. Some people say it was just the turning of the different tiers of the cake, that it was cracking the foundation. Some people said it was the water, that it was causing mold and mildew to form, and that it was causing water damage to the sets. So like I said, eventually management just decided that the upkeep wasn't worth it, and they turned off the rotating and they turned off the water effects. Eventually, they covered over this scene with a giant scrim that you see here in these pictures, so that you only saw the scene for a very short amount of time and you really didn't notice it wasn't turning or wasn't doing anything, that they were just standing there. After the Footlight Parade scene, you saw a tribute to Gene Kelly and Singing in the Rain, and then you saw Mary Poppins and Bert in a tribute to that movie. Next was the gangster area, and this is one of the two places that a live actor might join your tour. You might get stopped here and you would be hijacked by a gangster. It would depend on which show you got that day. There were actually two options. So this is a map of the track of the Great Movie Ride. And if it was a busy day, you would see, that would depend on which show you shot. There was show A and show B. Show B was the most common, and that's where you were stopped in the gangster area and were hijacked by a gangster. Show A is you would travel through the gangster area and not be stopped. And then when you got into the Old West, oh, I'm doing it backwards. You wouldn't travel through the gangster. You would stop in the gangster area and be hijacked by a gangster. So basically, as you see here, these green squares are ride cars. So you would start out in the load area with 4 of them. And if it was a busy day, 2 of them would continue and would be stopped here in the bank area and would be hijacked by a bank robber. The other 2 would stop in the gangster area and would be hijacked by a gangster. Okay, I think I've got that explained well enough. I messed that up. I'm sorry about that. So generally, usually only A would run, the gangster one. But sometimes, if, like I said, if it was busy, they would do both. This is the gangster area. This is an animatronic of James Cagney. And then this is some more animatronics in the gangster area. This is the alien area. You can see the alien attacking the people on the ride, and Ripley here. Where's my mouse? These are some of the animatronics in the gangster area. This on the left is Clint Eastwood, and here on the right is John Wayne. This John Wayne figure originally had a belt buckle that was actually belonged to John Wayne. but sadly it was stolen and had to be replaced by a replica. There's another shot of the John Wayne animatronic and another view of the gangster area. There is being held up by the Western area. Just another shot of the Indiana Jones section. In the Indiana Jones section, there were a couple of hidden hieroglyphics. One of them featured R2-D2 and C-3PO, and the other featured Donald and Mickey. Here is Jane, as I told you, how she looked when she was eventually placed on the elephant. And this is Tarzan swinging. I always kind of thought that this was kind of a cheesy effect. That's just my opinion. There was a Casablanca scene with Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart. This plane was only the front section of the plane was in this scene. You could actually see the tail section of this plane if you rode the Jungle Cruise in the Magic Kingdom. And it's actually still there today. There was the Wizard of Oz section of the ride. Liza Minnelli actually did the voice of Judy Garland that was in the ride. That was a video, but I'm not going to show that. And then the final montage of the Great Movie Ride featured dozens of great films. Some of them were Airplane, Amadeus, Ben-Hur, Beverly Hills Cop, Patton, Blazing Saddles, Gone with the Wind, The 7-Year Itch, Dr. Zhivago, many, many others. That is a shot of the Great Movie Ride, what it looked like at night. And now in the Chinese theater is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. In 2017, it was announced that they would close the Great Movie Ride to make room for this replacement. And, you know, the Great Movie Ride either needed to be updated or it needed to be replaced. And as sad as I was to see it go, that was just the truth about it. The last ride was given on August 13th of 2017. This is a map of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. It's in the same building that the Great Movie Ride was in. And these are some pictures from the ride. I loved the Great Movie Ride. I did not want to like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I was a little salty about them closing it, but I have to say that I love Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I think it's one of the best rides at Disney World today. So if you go, this is a must ride in my opinion. Echo Lake is another area of the park. It was inspired by a similarly named neighborhood in LA, and it's designed to mimic the California crazy form of architecture. We have Gertie the dinosaur here, and we have this ship that's also a food stand. So that's another part of the California crazy. Also in Echo Lake is Hyperion Theater, which has a musical show based on Frozen right now. And then behind the Hyperion Theater is a section named Commissary Lane that connects Hollywood Boulevard to Grand Avenue, which is another section of the park. And that's where the ABC Commissary and the Sci-Fi Drive-In are. Also in this area is Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. This opened a little bit after the park on August 25th, 1989. It's a live show at Disney based, of course, on the Indiana Jones franchise, and it features stunts and live reenacted scenes. It's executive produced by George Lucas. And here he is with Michael Eisner opening up the attraction. And there's one scene there is when Indy is chased by the giant boulder. This is the boulder at the studios. It's a 400-pound ball of rubber. Just some pictures of some of the stunts that you see at the stunt show. A few more here. Star Tours also opened the same year as the park, December 15th, 1989. We're going to do things with Star Tours that have never been done in any theme park attraction anywhere, said the Walt Disney Parks chairman. Forward. So passengers are taken on a fictional travel agency tour on a special vehicle, and it used to be piloted by a drone pilot named RX-24. That version that opened in 1989 closed in 2010, and it was updated and renovated and became Star Tours The Adventure Continues. It's basically the same ride, although now there's different scenarios that you might have. So every ride is a little different. And also now it's piloted by C-3PO. So you get to see a really nice animatronic of C-3PO. Grand Avenue is inspired by a real location of the same name in downtown Los Angeles. This area houses Muppet Vision 3D, and it's also home to Pizza Rizzo, which is a pizza restaurant owned by Rizzo the Rat from the Muppets. And it's also home to Baseline Tap House, which is a California-style pub, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. And this is a view of when they were working on Galaxy's Edge. This right here in the center of the picture is what is now the entrance to Galaxy's Edge. So that's how you get to Galaxy's Edge, is through Grand Avenue. This is just from the air when they were working on getting this ready to open Galaxy's Edge. Now, Grand Avenue was originally planned as an area that was going to be called Muppet Studios. Disney was in talks to acquire the Muppets at the time, and they were going to build, in addition to Muppet Vision 3D, they were going to include a Muppet Vision, a Muppet themed restaurant and a Muppet dark ride parody of the Great Movie Ride. These are concept arts from that ride. That would have been an amazing ride. It's one of the things that breaks my heart that was never built, because I love the Muppets. The deal fell through because sadly Jim Henson died, and only Muppet Vision 3D was ever actually built. This is Muppet Vision 3D, which opened May 16th, 1991. When you enter the building, there's a sign right here on the right when you enter that says "Back in 5 minutes, key is under mat." And if you actually lift up the mat, there is a key there. Another joke in the queue is this. It's a bag full of Jell-O, but if you say it really quick, it's actually a net. So if you say it's a net full of Jell-O, a net full of Cello, get it? That's the Muppets humor. Anyway, and then also in the queue is this tuxedo that was actually worn by Kermit in the Muppets. So you get to see that. The show itself is a 3D film featuring the Muppets. It was filmed in January of 1990, and it was actually directed by Jim Henson. It was one of his final Muppet projects before he died. I mentioned also in Grand Avenue is this Baseline Tap House. If you are at the studios, I highly recommend trying Baseline Tap House. They have a variety of small bites. They have beer flights. They have lagers, ciders. They do have non-alcoholic drinks as well, of course. They have a Bavarian pretzel. They have a charcuterie board, California cheeses. Really, really great stuff. Animation Courtyard was an area of the park when it first opened. It was home to attractions based on films and characters created by Walt Disney Animation Studios. It was marked by the studio arch, and it was originally the starting point for the studio backlot tour. Inside the buildings, you would find the animation gallery. You would find an area where you could learn to draw from an Imagineer. You could make yourself into a character. Lots of fun things to do in there. Now it's been changed into Star Wars Launch Bay. There's a lot of different props and items from the Star Wars franchise inside, and also there's meet and greets with some Star Wars characters that have just come back recently. Next to Animation Courtyard is Voyage of the Little Mermaid, which is a shortened version of the film. It incorporates live actors and puppets. It opened January 7th, 1992. As of today, it is not open yet, but I expect it'll probably reopen soon. It closed, of course, for the pandemic, and some of the live action shows have been a little bit slow to return. This is One Man's Dream that's just down the walkway from the Little Mermaid show. It is a walkthrough exhibit of Walt Disney's life, really. You can see his animation desk. You can see the setup for when he made a film about what he planned to do with the land in Florida. There is this picture of Walt that I posed next to. There's an original Dumbo ride vehicle. The original Mr. Lincoln animatronic is also in there. Lots of Disney history there. I highly recommend taking a walk through. Don't just pass it up if you're there. Sunset Boulevard was the first expansion of the park. It was built in 1994. It has 2 outdoor amphitheaters and it has 2 rides. It's got the amphitheater for Beauty and the Beast and the amphitheater for Fantasmic. And then it also has the Tower of Terror and Rock and Roller Coaster. Twilight Zone Tower of Terror is this ride. And of course, it is a drop ride themed to the Twilight Zone. It's a great ride. My husband says, one reason that the drops are so thrilling is that the elevator falls faster than free fall. It's actually faster than the force of gravity. It's actually pulled down, it just doesn't drop. The ride system pulls it down. It gives it more control and also makes it go faster. This is the Tower of Terror under construction. And some more construction photos of it. These gates right outside of the Tower of Terror were based on real gates. The 2 stone gates were the grand entrance to a real estate subdivision called Hollywoodland. And you might have heard of Hollywoodland because of the famous Hollywood sign. Originally, that sign said Hollywoodland and it advertised this housing development. There's the Tower of Terror at night and just some pictures from in the queue of the Tower of Terror. Sorry, I'm moving a little fast, but we're running out of time. Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith is the other attraction in this area. It is a roller coaster. It launches guests from 0 to 57 in less than 3 seconds and straight into an inversion, which pulls 5 Gs. It was the first Disney roller coaster in any of its US theme parks to invert riders during the ride. One interesting thing about Rock and Roller Coaster is that the track was actually built first and then the building was built around it. I was amazed when I read that. So this is a picture of the Rock and Roller track out in the open before they built the building. This is the pre-show for the ride where the band Aerosmith is back here. It looks like you're actually talking to them live and they welcome you to the attraction. Apparently, someone said that this gesture, the one on the left, that's the original. Someone felt that that was obscene. And so after 17 years, Disney went ahead and changed it and digitally added a finger here to Steven Tyler's hand. So no one will be offended by whatever they felt that was obscene. We don't know why. This is the ride vehicles for Rock and Roller Coaster. And there is a promotional photo of it and a couple pictures of the ride going, what it looks like with the lights on. Very different from what it looks like in the dark. Fantasmic is the nighttime spectacular at Hollywood Studios. It opened October 15th, 1998. This is the theater under construction. It's a 10,000 seat amphitheater. These are some pictures of Fantasmic. It's about the power of imagination, showcased by Mickey experiencing a dream. It originally debuted in Disneyland in 1992. And actually, today is November 1st. In 3 days, on November 4th, Fantasmic makes its return, the first time after COVID that it'll be performed. Actually, tonight it's being performed for cast members only. So I guess technically tonight is the first time. Toy Story Land is one of the newest extensions to the park. It opened on June 30th, 2018. It houses Toy Story Mania, which is a great ride. It actually was the most popular ride in all of the Disney parks, probably until Rise of the Resistance was built. Here are some pictures on it. I do love Toy Story Mania. Another ride in this area is Slinky Dog Dash. I just love this picture of one of the ride vehicles for Slinky Dog Dash being brought into the studios on a truck bed. This is the entrance for Slinky Dog Dash. It is a roller coaster, but kind of a junior roller coaster. maybe a roller coaster, one of your first roller coasters for a kid to go on. It's no inversions, no really big hills, so it'd be good for a kid to go on. Galaxy's Edge was announced in 2016. There are 2 rides in Galaxy's Edge, the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run and the Rise of the Resistance. This land is very highly themed, as you can see. It is amazing to see. This is the Millennium Falcon that is in Galaxy's Edge. It was the first full-size Millennium Falcon that was ever built. For the movies, they didn't have to build a full-size Millennium Falcon. They only needed to build bits and pieces of it. This is inside the Rise of Resistance ride. This room is very impressive, the Stormtrooper room. I don't want to give away too much about the ride, but it's a very impressive ride. This just shows you the footprint of the ride and how large it is, showing you the entrance, the queue, the pre-show, and then this is the ride building here. Very, very large. Here is the entrance for Rise of the Resistance. And a look at the ride vehicles for Rise of the Resistance. And again, another picture of the Stormtrooper room. Some of these Stormtroopers are animatronics and they do move. Some of them are just static. Another view of the Millennium Falcon and the entrance to the Millennium Falcon ride. And there is the Millennium Falcon being built. This is inside the Millennium Falcon ride, part of the queue. If you remember Star Wars: A New Hope, the very first movie that came out in 1977, this is the table where Chewie and I think it's Luke is playing with them, and they're playing a game, and they say, "Let the Wookiee win." That's where they were playing. This is what Rise of the, not Rise of the Resistance, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run looks like when you're riding it. There's the cockpit again. Quickly, just a little bit of trivia. From 1988 to 2003, the studio's theme park functioned as a working film studio, and they made a number of films. These are some of them that they made. Ernest Saves Christmas, Splash 2, The Lottery, Passenger 57, The Tower of Terror. And then animated movies, they made a couple of Roger Rabbit shorts. They actually made Mulan at the studios. Mickey's Mouse Works, John Henry, Lilo and Stitch, and Brother Bear. Here's another piece of trivia. This is the Hollywood Studios Park. This is the Chinese Theater here down at the bottom, and the entrance plaza is at the top. Do you see a hidden Mickey there? I'll give you a hint. There it is. So the core of the park right here is a large hidden Mickey. When you're
Valerie, yes. Don't feel like you have to rush.
Okay, we're almost done.
Okay, yeah.
I'm almost done. When you're in the queue for Toy Story, pay attention to the board game and the barcode that you see here. The numbers on the barcode represent December. This says December 15th, 2006, right here. And it's significant because it's the date that the plans for Toy Story Midway Mania was announced to the public. And there's a lot of different Easter eggs like that and barcodes in the Toy Story land. This is Fantasmic. And when you go to see Fantasmic, pay attention to this mountain. When you watch the show and see all the pyrotechnics and water effects, you would think that this lake that surrounds the mountain might be pretty deep. All the boats go on it and things, but it's actually only 1.5 feet deep. Even though it's only 1.5 feet deep, the lagoon takes 1.9 million gallons of water to fill. And that's enough to supply water to over 24,000 bathtubs, believe it or not. Okay, so I am only 2 minutes over, yay for me. But I'd love to answer any questions you have or see any comments you have. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is fun. Love Toy Story Buzz Lightyear shooting game. That was the best. Any similar newer rides like it? Not right now. I'm trying to think. There's not much new coming to the parks. They've got Toy Story, Tron, which is a roller coaster coming to the Magic Kingdom. But there's really nothing coming to Hollywood Studios right now. Epcot They just opened Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a coaster. So no, there's nothing new interactive that's been announced as of now. Let's see. And yes, I do believe this will be available on the library's website. Yes, it has changed over the years. Yes, it has. A lot. Like I said, that's the only constant with Hollywood Studios is the change. Epcot is in a lot of change right now, but it's still not as much change as this park.
And to address Chester's question, we don't put them directly on our website, Chester, but I will email you this recording tomorrow. So anyone who registered will get the recording via email. We sometimes put these up on the town's YouTube channel, which can be found if you go to YouTube and search Tewksbury TV, you'll sometimes find these there. They have like 10 times the subscribers as the library's YouTube channel. So we just tend to put our stuff on their channel. So do folks have any other comments or questions for Valerie as we start to wrap up? Frank says, bravo.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
Take a bow, Valerie. If anyone has any other comments or questions, now is the time. Let's see here. And Valerie, I don't know if you touched on this. I don't think you did. What's your favorite ride at Hollywood Studios, or what's your favorite attraction?
I think I have two favorite attractions at Studios. One is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and one is Toy Story Mania. I have a kind of controversial opinion that Rise of the Resistance is overrated. I think it's overrated because maybe I knew too much about it before we went. I'd been watching the construction. I watched videos of it before we went. So maybe that spoiled it for me. But you know, I saw so many people saying it was the best ride they'd ever been on and practically crying when they came off of it. And both my husband and I were like, yeah, it was a good ride, but it wasn't life-changing. So my two favorites are Mickey and Minnie and Toy Story Mania. Somebody says, why do they keep changing? I think that MGM has changed so much because originally it started out to be an actual working studio, and that was their focus. And as they lost the contract with MGM and then realized that it wasn't working out having it as a live studio, they were really doing all of their filming work and their cartooning work in California. They needed to change the focus of the park. And then also they wanted the park to be more than just a half-day park. And so that's why they've added so much to it. That's why they've changed the focus. You know, when you go away from being a studio, that kind of negates the backlot tour. And that was half of the park. So that's why so much change, I think.
Valerie, I muted myself, sorry. So why don't we wrap it there? I don't see any other comments or questions. Marianne says, excellent presentation. So we will see Valerie next month. Let me pull this up real quick, Valerie. I'm not prepared. Okay. I believe Valerie is giving a talk on the animal kingdom.
Yes, I know it's Animal Kingdom, and I want to say it's the first week of the month.
Tuesday, December 6th at 2 o'clock. So 5 weeks from today, Tuesday, December 6th, 2 o'clock. I can speak. Tuesday, December 6th at 2 o'clock. In 5 weeks, Valerie will be back with us for the history of the animal kingdom. So looking forward to that, Valerie.
Yes, me too. I can't wait to see you all. And thank you everyone for joining today. I had a great time.
As did I. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Valerie. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.